All right, we're here with Larry Clemens, class of 1980. This is inside Argos Soccer. Larry, this is a very colorful resume you got here. 28 game win streak at one point, 37 game unbeaten streak. That's nuts. Uh, what was it? I saw 11 clean sheets in the 79 season with over 20 games. That's just stupid. Uh,
Well, that certainly was not me doing all that, but I got to be a part of those teams for sure. As anybody that knows anything about Argus soccer, those teams throughout the 70s really, but especially in the second half of the 1970s, were just strong teams. Boy, it was just incredible, the talent that was on the fields. Um, I was a goalkeeper, and quite honestly, I didn't have to do a lot of work. It was all the people in front of me that did all the work and
right.
things. But yeah, one thing that did stick out was that senior year I think it was 79 when we had like 11 shutouts that year. But
Yeah.
again, that was a credit to the team. I'd be interesting if we actually kept stats back then, how many actual saves I had to make. It probably wasn't that many, really, because all those guys did all the work.
Right. Well, let's just dive right into it. Larry, what
Yeah.
started your love for soccer? What got you going on it?
Yeah. Well, for me, it was interesting as a kid when we were in elementary school. We would go out on the playground there, and of course, the school grounds were all different back then and things. But there was a hill. Would have been just up above. I think it would have been like the fifth and sixth grade classrooms or fifth grade classrooms on the elementary wing. There was a hill up there where the guys would get together and we'd play soccer. And we
Right.
started playing soccer at a really young age there. I mean, and I always liked to pick the team that was the underdog because the better,
Mhm.
more athletic guys would get all together. And I would go on to the other team typically and decide to be the goalkeeper. And that's
Right.
what got me to the love of soccer and just the love of being a part of a team and of course, all the camaraderie of all the friends. We grew up on that hill out there playing soccer together.
Oh yeah, it truly is a brotherhood. Growing up in Argus through that dominance of the 1970s, three different state championships, what was that like to watch and experience growing up?
It was, yeah, it was my experience and all of us that grew up at that time. It's sort of hard to explain because we didn't know any other way. We didn't have
Right.
any other experiences in our lives, but it was special for sure because you come to really appreciate the seasons. And you
Hmm.
knew as soccer season got closer, you knew that 10 mile in the morning, 10 mile in the afternoon run was
Yep.
coming up. You would try to do a little bit of running in the summertime, but none of us,
Hmm.
not mo- most of us didn't do much. But I
Right.
always remembered uh, the Sunday before soccer season would start and a mix of old alumni players along with the incoming high school players and the existing high school players would usually get together on Sunday afternoon for a pretty vicious soccer game together to sort of get prepared for the season
Oh yeah.
and all. But it was, yeah, you just really looked forward to the camaraderie, the community,
Hmm.
everything that was about Argus soccer and still today is about so much of our Argus sports.
Did you have any heroes growing up that you liked to watch or that inspired you to play for Argus?
Well, I started going to the games probably in about when I was probably about a sixth grade or so, and
Mhm.
would go to the high school games. And normally, a bunch of us would go down the hill from where we used to play soccer in high school and have a game going on of our own
Hmm.
down below the
Hmm.
hill. But yeah, I mean, Lyndon Bailey and I mean the Van Dynes, all those guys were good. I remember, I think I'm getting the name correct here, but um, I know his last name was Zent. and it might have been Roger, but he was a goalkeeper. I think he was the goalkeeper on the 1973 state championship team.
Okay.
And he was sort of inspirational to me being a goalkeeper, and he was
Hmm.
successful and everything. And that, just reinforced to me that I was playing the right position, to practice. And so that was one of my, guys that really sort of inspired me.
Right. Who were some of your teammates that you admired and respected the most out
Ah,
of who you played with?
Well, you got to go back through the yearbooks, and I think every one of them, was quite honestly for me in high school. It wasn't until my senior year that I really started to become a pretty good goalkeeper. I played goalkeeper all 4 years, off and on.
Yeah.
Certainly played quite a bit of varsity and things, but I played a lot of junior varsity and also, for the most part, most of the guys were better than me. I got good at soccer when I went to college and then after college playing and
Hmm.
things, and became much better player. But I think of the guys that were right in front of me my senior year, Andy Castleman and David Sherwood and Kurt Feast. Those guys
Hmm.
were tougher than nails. And one, David Sherwood was a big man, uh, probably one of the nicest men you would ever have met. He recently passed. And then Andy Castleman was sort of a smaller guy and things. So you
Hmm.
sort of had the long and the short of it out there right in
Right.
front of you. And that was my defense, was two guys in front of me, those guys. But then you got, Don Odell, Tim Bailey, the Bill Odell and that group, Jimmy Ward. There was just a long line of just fantastic players at that
Hmm.
time. And quite honestly, some of the guys I admired the most were, the junior varsity players. That's the one thing I always liked about Argus soccer was the varsity guys. Yeah, they were the better players and all that. But
Right.
Ed Miller, who was the junior varsity coach at the time, we put together some great junior varsity teams. I know my
Hmm.
sophomore and junior years, we went through those 2 seasons and never got scored on for two
Wow.
whole seasons, never got scored on. And
Oh.
and that was that was a junior varsity because we didn't get a lot of the things, but it was fun because those guys
Yeah.
there were guys that were trying to get on the varsity. Each and every one of us were
Hmm.
trying our hardest to impress and try to make that varsity team and stuff. So that was a lot of fun. Probably some of my best memories are some of us that were just grinding it out at that
Hmm.
junior varsity level and hustling and working our tails off.
Right. What made you such a good goalkeeper? What would you say were your best strengths?
Yeah, goalkeepers, that any goalkeeper that might listen to this probably knows this is, goalkeepers have a certain mentality. We just sort of have no fear. I
Yeah.
remember that growing up as a little kid. You would go out and grab the ball, and especially at Argus, it didn't mean
Hmm.
anything that the goalkeeper had the ball in his arms. You were still going to get kicked
Oh
or,
yeah.
knocked around. That was just Argus soccer and things.
Hmm.
I didn't mind that. I was a kid. I didn't mind getting roughed up and I didn't mind roughing people up either and things. And I think that was probably the biggest thing that I sort of wasn't afraid. And the ball, I was going to keep that ball out of the net, had that mentality. It wasn't until after I had graduated from Argus and my senior year, of course, was the varsity keeper and we set some records and had a great year that year.
Hmm.
But then I went as I got prepared to go to play college soccer and went to a camp just specifically for goalkeepers led by Joe Macknick, who now anybody that watches soccer on TV, he's always the referee that they go to when there's a VAR call or
Okay.
no, Dr. Joe. You'll hear that.
Gotcha.
That guy taught me really to play goalkeeper and set me off on a course where I really then became really what I would consider a decent soccer player and goalkeeper and things. But you got to have that mentality, first of all, of not
Oh
letting
yeah.
that ball in.
Oh yeah. What was your experience playing for Coach Snyder?
He was one of his, we all know him. He's a great motivator and things. And part of it was what I liked about his leadership, and it's some leadership skills that probably many of us that have had pretty successful careers and things have used, is he's just really honest. If we were
Hmm.
playing a crappy game, he would tell us. All of us, and I'll say this, gutless wonders. Many of us, heard that in a halftime speech, a bunch of gutless
Oh yeah.
wonders and things, and that's a saying that still I know goes around Argus occasionally, or other teams and all. But yeah, he was. You wanted to play hard for him. Uh, and things. And he was a really interesting leader in that way. And then he couple it with his assistant coaches that he had, at least in my time, with Ed Miller and then Ted Chittum come along. They provided sort of a balance where Coach Snyder would just give it to you in as
Hmm.
plainest way as possible. And sometimes, it would hurt you because you're like, oh gosh, yeah, I know I didn't do that right. But then you'd have an Ed Miller or a Ted Chittum that then would be positive. It was almost like a good cop, bad cop thing at times, where they
Right.
would then
Right.
go take you off to the side and sort of cheer you up a little bit.
Hmm. Uh, Describe your emotions like before games, getting your mentality before a game, and putting on the jersey. What was that like for you?
Yeah, for me, well, one, there was a huge amount of pride in it all, of course, and quite honestly, in many times a lot of weight that came with it, because you knew that the expectation was to win. And
Hmm.
quite honestly, probably 75% of our games, you went into the game totally confident you're going to win. It only came down to schools like CMA, Westview, Bethany Christian, some of
Hmm.
the Fort Wayne schools that started to play. And if we were traveling to Indianapolis or something where you knew you might be in a really tough game, then you'd be
Right.
nervous. But I would certainly characterize it would often be very nerve wracking, because you knew, especially as a goalkeeper, that you were at the last line of defense. If it got by
Hmm.
you, it was a score, and
Right.
especially against those teams like CMA and Bethany Christian and some of those, you knew not many goals were going to get scored on either side, and so
Hmm.
every shot, every goal mattered. I remember my senior year, we were playing CMA, and it was in the state tournament,
Hmm.
and I was very thankful for this. But Coach Snyder came and pulled me out of the classroom. I don't know, it was sometime early in the afternoon, and said, "Larry,
Hmm.
why don't you just go to the library and just study in the library the rest of the day?" Because he knew I just needed to go somewhere, let my nerves calm and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I was always
Yeah.
really thankful for that. Yeah.
What was it like to be part of two different state championships? A lot of people can't even say they've been part of one. So what was it like being part of two of them? And what do you remember in those 2 years on those
Well,
championship teams from those championship games?
yeah, for me, I just remember the quality of all the guys that were, the starters and all that. The
Hmm.
76 team, I was a freshman. I got the honor of traveling to the state championship and being a part of the team and things. I, of course, didn't get to play, but it was a real honor to see those guys, because they had worked 4 years really hard to get
Hmm.
to that point. So it was just a simple privilege to be even on the team and things, and then to be a part of a state championship team and all. And then in the 78 team, again, there was just an outstanding bunch of guys playing soccer, that, the Odells and Matt Chamberlain, Dave Sherwood, Andy Castleman,
Hmm.
Randy Emble. There was a bunch of really good players. Mark Malone was a good player at the time and things. They were the ones that did all the work. And then, I certainly got to play in those games in the 79, but those guys earned the championship. And I always
Yeah.
felt just honored to get to be a part of it. Certainly, I'm sure at the practices and things like that, because we practiced hard and all that together,
Oh yeah.
contributing in that way. Those guys won those championships for sure.
Gotcha. I'm I'm sorry. I gotta read this. A lot of numbers here. So the '79 Argus squad scored at the time. It was a program record of 103 goals, posted 11 shutouts, went 19 games unbeaten, with only the one loss coming to Bishop Lures in the regional. The loss ended the program's 37 match unbeaten run, program best still to this day. How was it to
Yeah.
play on that team, and what made you guys so successful?
Well, that was a fantastic team. That year, I was the goalkeeper on the team, and was, had a good year for sure as an individual, but more importantly as a team, we had a great year and things. And yeah, I think that year, if I go back and look, I think that might have been we got beat by Bishop Lures. That was the third time that year I think we played them. And I
Oh,
think each time they were getting a little bit better. And
hmm
when we met them in I don't know if it was semi-state or whatever finals, it was the next game was to go to the state championship. And we'd already beat
hmm
CMA, which everybody had said it was sort of between CMA and Argos to win the state championship that
right.
year. And so I wouldn't say we went into that game overconfident or anything, but they had changed some rules. Soccer was evolving fast in Indiana at that time. And they
hmm
had changed like overtime rules and things like that to where that was a shootout. And it was like you start at the 35-yard line, dribble in and shoot. We didn't really know how to prepare for that. Again,
Right.
I'd never had any like coaching on goalkeeping. We would watch the professionals do it, and you could
hmm
see the goalkeeper come running out, and and we know today now that was simply cutting down the angle and things.
Right.
But we got beat in a shootout there, uh, in part because we really didn't understand or nor had ever really practiced that title. Gosh knows we scored dozens of goals that year, but not
hmm
in that type of a format. And so I think that sort of threw us off, certainly from my perspective as a goalkeeper in trying to make the saves. Wasn't quite sure how to play that. And then at the same time, I'm not sure, our guys that were attacking either. We just didn't have a lot of experience with that.
Right.
And so it was a tough loss for sure. And
Mhm.
I later became pretty good at dealing with one-on-ones and things like that as a goalkeeper in my college and after college career.
Yeah. So, as you said, you graduated and went on to play soccer at Huntington. Uh, how would you describe your college career? And did you think the Argus prepared you for collegiate soccer the right way?
In my case, yes, I totally Argus prepared me in the right way, and then for me, I really got the skill as I went and really studied being a goalkeeper and got
hmm
trained by some professionals and things as I went into college. Interestingly enough, my freshman year in college, they had a senior goalkeeper at
hmm
Huntington. And so they allowed him to play that year. And so they put me up on a forward position. And for a
Okay.
while that season, I was the leading scorer on the team at Huntington, but yet I was a goalkeeper, but playing striker for him. And also, yeah, it prepared me because it prepared me to always fight.
hmm
And not in a physical way of fist fighting or something like that, but simply to never give up and, put your heart into it the entire time. And that was what Argus taught me. And so those basic skills of, you know, always having a winning attitude, always, having confidence and desire mixed with some skill, made me a pretty good college goalkeeper and got,
Yeah.
several awards and things like that through my college career and stuff. Got to play with some pretty good players,
Yeah.
during that time of my life.
Cool. You eventually joined the Argus coaching staff after playing. Um, which years did you coach? How was that experience? And what for you was the big difference between coaching and playing, but still being part of the team?
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the exact years that I graduated from college in 1984 and then
hmm
moved back to Argus because I was fortunate to get a job in South Bend area. And I was
hmm
playing with South Bend Soccer Club. And then ultimately we turned that into the Indiana Invaders Soccer Club in
hmm
South Bend and played with that group for many years and things. And so I came back to Argus. I love to coach. Soccer did a lot for me. They gave me a college scholarship, got me to college, probably wouldn't have went otherwise. And so it meant a lot to me. And so I always felt a little bit of a responsibility to give back a bit. So
hmm
I started coaching one of the early travel teams in Argus. The Stone brothers were on that. I think
Yeah.
Todd Vanderwill even played on that some. And there was a really Jeff Odell and a good group of guys. And we traveled. And this was all a part of the transition of Argus soccer from sort of the old era to the more modern game of passing and things like that. And
Hmm.
I started doing that back in Argus and got to know a lot of the kids. Tim Van Dyne and I, of course, knew each other at the time pretty well because we played, soccer together occasionally and things. And, I started working with the goalkeepers on the Argus team
Yeah.
and, I started working with them and Tim, invited me to just be the assistant coach. I think I was there for a couple years as the assistant and really enjoyed it. It was fun. It
Yeah.
was brought back a lot of old memories of, you know, walking on the field for big games against Culver Military and some of those schools and things. But it was all at that time about a transition. So I did that for a couple of years. Loved every minute of it. But then I ended up having to move away from the Argus area and moved over to Angola, Indiana.
Mm.
And so that prevented me from carrying on coaching at Argus. I always loved it. I actually started the high school soccer team in Angola. I've got some pictures up. This is my office, and there's
Oh,
several
yeah.
soccer pictures of some of my high school teams over there that,
Awesome.
sectional and conference champs and things and all. So I loved it. If I could have stayed in the Argus area, I would have still be today probably still actively
Hmm.
involved because I went on then to coach at Trine University for about 15 years and just quit that about 5 years ago. So I probably still would be coaching soccer back in Argus if I was still able to be in the community.
Hmm. Well, you pretty much covered my next question, but I'm going to still ask it anyway. Tell me about the rest of your coaching journey after
Yeah,
you left Argus.
yeah, yeah. Well, I played a lot of soccer with the South Bend
Hmm.
Soccer Club and then the Indiana Invaders. And that was a family. My brother-in-law and myself and a player who played at Akron started
Hmm.
that. We all played soccer together in college.
Right.
He played at Notre Dame. And so in the summer times, I would usually play with a group of guys from Notre Dame. And sometimes we'd get some IU players on it. We were usually competing against the IU players for state championships at the men's
Yeah.
open level and things. But yeah, when I moved to Angola, they didn't have soccer there, but they had some families that wanted to learn about it. And so I was new to the community. It was a great way to start it. And
Hmm.
I was the assistant coach the first year there. We got blown out by everybody. It would have been a great team for Argus to play. It would have been a classic game. Argus wins 20-0 type of thing, a bunch of kids. But the next year we started getting good and we started working pretty hard. And actually, my first year as a head coach, we won the sectional championship and actually then went on to the regional and ended up taking Warsaw to overtime shootout
Oh,
and
wow.
things. And so, yeah, and it was so interesting because I took so many of the principles of Argus soccer along with the skill that I had been learning playing in college and after college with the teams I played with and started to mix that together. And so like our regiment was 7 miles in the morning. And if you're familiar with the
Hmm.
Angola area, it's a lot of hills. So 7 miles
Yeah.
on hills up and down in the morning, 7 miles come back in the evening. It was an
Hmm.
Argus thing and brought that into the Angola team. And it taught discipline and dedication and all.
Hmm.
And we had some really good, successful teams. Won some conference championships. They've won sectional championships up there and all for a rural community like that and had good soccer there. I did that for about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years and then transitioned
Okay.
over to Trine University and started coaching soccer at Trine University and
Hmm.
was the men's assistant coach there for, gosh, 10 years. And then as my career took me to, traveling in different places
Hmm.
around the world and what have you, I just became their goalkeeper coach. For about the last 5 years. I quit doing that about 5 years ago. I was just starting to sort of age out of my knowledge. And, there's so many more new techniques to teach the kids soccer and things these days, even at the college level, that I felt like
Hmm.
it was time for me to give it up. Plus, I would always be sore after because I was just getting too old to do it.
Gotcha. Um, how has it been for you personally, if you have to been like to be following Argus soccer as recent as you want to go? How has it been for you following the team?
Oh, I loved, the state championship game down here in Indianapolis. This is where my office is in downtown Indianapolis. And I stayed in town that night just to go to the, soccer game when the
Hmm.
Argos won the state championship here a couple years
Right.
ago. I follow the games. If I can, I try to make it over to the alumni game. It's been
Hmm.
about 5 years since I've been able to do that, but I did play in the game.
Yeah.
They called me out there and I played with the guys and things. Uh, I love following Argus soccer.
Yeah.
I think everybody that was a player there probably in some form or fashion still today follows it, whether it's game by game or just season by season and stuff,
Right.
because it's something that's in your, sort of gets to be in your DNA. And
Hmm.
it's just a part of the routine and all. And it's nice to see some of the family names that are still called out. I don't know
Hmm.
exactly the relationship to maybe the family names that I played with, but you assume that it's a, it's a grandson or it's a nephew or something like that.
Right.
And
Right.
also it's really neat to see that tradition. Um,
Mhm.
it's something special, for sure.
Yeah. What do you think? What traits do you think makes a successful Argus soccer player?
Well, and I'll say this from my era. You had to be fearless during my era,
Hmm.
and it was a rough game, and some of the roughest games were quite honestly practice when people were
Yeah.
fighting for positions and Coach Snyder always had this uh, drill. It was offense against the defense, and he
Hmm.
would maybe put in the younger guys on defense and tell the varsity guys you got 10 minutes to score 5 goals. And so it was vicious and all, as you can imagine, and everything, even though if I had the ball in my hands, it didn't mean you weren't going to get kicked, type of thing.
Hmm.
So you had to be really tough. And then also the style of soccer we played with, two defenders, three midfielders, and five forwards. It was a run and gun game is what we would
Hmm.
call it. And so the fitness was just tremendous because you
Oh
would
yeah.
have to run and then you'd have to get back on defense and things. And so the fitness aspect of it and that mentality, there were some guys at that era that were starting to pick up some decent skill. But if you were a right-footed player, you were pretty much a right-footed player. You didn't really kick the ball
Hmm.
much with your left foot like today's players and things.
Right.
But skill was still a factor because I tell you what, some of the guys on our team, Tim Bailey, some of the guys that put in just tons of goals, that doesn't happen out of luck. That happens because they had the speed, the skill, and the
Hmm.
stamina to run like they could and things. So those were the key things that worked for us back then. Now today, those qualities are all necessary, but you got to have the skill to go with it
Right.
and the knowledge. Yeah.
Hmm. I won't hold you too long. I got one more for you.
Okay.
What does Argus soccer mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good one and a difficult one maybe for me to say. It took me to college and gave me an education
Hmm.
and gave me one hell of a great career that I've had. Um, I met my wife through soccer. Her brother and I played college. Well, he played at Notre Dame. I played at Huntington, but
Hmm.
we played together in the summer times. And I met my wife through soccer. And then,
Right.
quite honestly, most all of her family are big soccer. We're a big soccer family. Most all of our
Oh yeah.
kids played at Division One level schools. Most of them, one of them played for the women's national team and things. And so it's quite honestly, it's been probably a foundational block of my entire life.
Hmm.
Started on that playground up there, kicking the ball around during playground time and stuff. So it's meant a lot to me. It certainly
Right.
has.
Right. All right, Larry. That's all I got. Anything you have to add?
No, I really appreciate you guys doing this. I think it's great. I love how you're trying to keep the tradition alive. I really applaud you for that. I think it's wonderful, and I'm so glad to see you and the younger generation of players recognizing many of these guys like myself that played way back when and things. And I
Oh
really
yeah,
appreciate what you guys are doing with this. I'll look forward to
right,
seeing this eventually get played.
right. Well, appreciate you for starting that tradition. Appreciate you for joining us today. Thank you so much, Larry. It's been great.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.